Hey, fourth graders. Today we are going to learn about certain kinds of lines that you're going to need to know about as you're thinking more about shapes. Today's Walt is that we are going to identify and define parallel lines and perpendicular lines. So our first start problem is which shape has parallel sides? I want you to think all the way back to third grade geometry when you were learning about quadrilaterals and try and remember what a parallel line is. So parallel lines are two lines that never touch. So these are parallel lines. If I continued them in any direction, remember your videos early in the week talked about how lines continue on and on and on. Well, if they go on and on and on and never touch, they are called parallel. So let's look at our picture here. If I continued this line and this line, whoop, they cross. And if I continued this line and this line, they cross. So if I continued this line and this line across from it on the opposite side, they would never touch. And if I continued this line and this line on the square in the opposite direction, they would never touch. So this one right here is the one that has parallel sides. So I give you a picture right here of parallel versus perpendicular. Parallel sides and perpendicular sides. Perpendicular sides make perfect little right angles. My pen isn't working. There we go. Perfect little right angles, which are 90 degrees. And so there's a 90-degree angle when two perpendicular lines cross. And notice they're crossing, which is very different than parallel lines because parallel lines never cross. So here's our first question. Jordan looks at the street map below. So here we have Oak Street, First Street, and Ash Street right here. Describe the relationship between Oak Street and First Street. Then describe the relationship between Oak Street and Ash Street. Let's do this one at a time. So if you were to look at this picture, we would see that Oak Street is highlighted and so is First Street. How can we describe these two streets? You're thinking, are they perpendicular or are they parallel? These lines are parallel lines because they never cross. You can never cross Oak Street and First Street. You can never cross, the two streets will never cross and have an intersection. Let's look at some parallel lines that you might see in your everyday life. Those are the parallel lines that are in the middle of a street to separate the street from the two sides. These parallel lines are the rails of a train. And look at these these fence posts are parallel lines. So we can also look at we're going to look at Ash Street and Oak Street. So we can think of each of those as a line. Okay, so this is Ash Street right here and Oak Street right here. What is happening with Ash and Oak Street? What angle do you see right here? Remember that way that mathematicians will show a right angle is with this corner right here. These are right angles. When lines cross and they form a right angle, they are called perpendicular lines. Let's look at some real-world examples of perpendicular lines. This railroad crossing sign, there are perpendicular lines right here. All those angles right there are making a 90-degree angle, a right angle. Same with this one. It's actually very similar. It's just kind of flipped on its side. That's showing that there is an intersection coming in the road. And look at the hands of the clock at 3 o'clock. We have a right angle right there. Now, let's do some work. Take out a piece of paper and start thinking, how many pairs of parallel sides does the shape below have? Explain how you know. So let's look, and we're going to look for parallel lines, which means they are lines that do not cross. So I'm going to try this one and this one. Oh, what happens if I continue? They cross right here. What about, let me switch my colors here. What about this side and this side? What happens with those sides? They never cross. So this has one set of parallel lines. And how do we know that? Because they never cross. Explain how many pairs of parallel sides does the shape below have? Explain how you know. I'd like you to hit your space bar and write this down. This rectangle, how many pairs of parallel lines does this rectangle have? All right, now that you've finished number 8, let's go to number 9. Which pair of lines are perpendicular? If you are forgetting what perpendicular means, please rewind this video and take a look at our examples. Is it A, B, C, or D? Please pause the video and write down your answer. All right. These 3 questions are going to also go on your paper. You're going to be using the pictures right here in order to solve this problem. How many pairs of parallel sides does the square have? Put an X on the square. All right, so you're not going to be able to put an X on there, but you can draw a picture of a square and write down, put an X where the where the perpendicular sides meet. So look at the window, and I want you to draw the window on your paper as best you can and circle 3 parallel line segments in the drawing. And here's our last question. Tell whether each statement that describes the streets below on the map is true or false. We have First Street, Main Street, High Street, Third Street, and Second Street. So you're going to look right here. First and Third Street are perpendicular. Is that true or false? Main and High Street are parallel. Second Street is perpendicular to Main Street. First Street is perpendicular to High Street. Please go ahead and pause the video and then submit these to your teacher once you're done. If you need a trick on perpendicular, remember the edges of a piece of paper are perpendicular. They make a perfect right angle at their corner. Miss you all. Hope you're doing well.